Hey, it's Kenton Friesen here with Forge Contractor Alliance, and I'm on today with Chris Wiebe, my good buddy, and we're gonna dig into some stuff. Chris, just let people know kind of where you're at in life and what's been going on.
Yeah, sure. So I am working at a company called White Mechanical now. I've been here for about 9 months, and I hold the role of Chief Business Officer here.
Right on. And you have a background in small business that you pretty much, from the time you're fairly young.
Yeah. I got into business when I was 25, luckily with my brother-in-law. And so that's more than 15 years ago now. And what an adventure. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's fun. And I've known you for a chunk of that time mostly from a distance, and lately more closely, which has been wonderful.
Yeah.
And for those of you who haven't met me, I'm Kenton, and I run a small exterior contracting company up in northern BC. And we just love to dig into different topics. Today, Chris, being an operations guy, being someone who likes to dig into companies and bring health to them, honestly, we're going to be talking a little bit about what to look for in your books, how to adopt maybe a healthier mindset around spreadsheets, and some of the different potential mindsets that can shift so that you are aware of when you're healthy and when you're not. And so let's get into this.
All right, looking forward to it.
A lot of people in small business tend to avoid this side of things because they're busy actually producing.
We think that things are going better than they actually are. And so then we're not paying attention to the things that we need to.
If you're not integrating the real numbers of what your business costs, then you can lie to yourself indefinitely. Chris, how are things?
Well, they're good overall. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit sleepier this morning. Thursdays are always a bit of a later night for us, and then I woke up extra early this morning so that I could still get to the gym before we actually did this. So
excellent.
But
that's good.
You know, I got to make sure that I stay inspirational so that you stay on track for your goal to lose 20 pounds in the next year.
I got to do it.
Yeah.
I'm
already beating you. So
they're good. Yeah. It's funny. I think that I was reflecting on our relationship, and I feel like we're like on the cusp between you and me of moving from like solid acquaintances to friends. And that's how I feel. Okay. And I think that happens through like it happens through learning to wrestle together. Mm-hmm. Like the friends that I appreciate, people that I consider friends, are people that it's not just about, chatting about the weather. It's about like, what are we doing in our lives? How are we pushing each other forward? And I think we're just getting to that point with each other, which is really cool.
That's a really interesting thing to consider. I mean, I've always pictured you from a mentor sort of standpoint, I guess. And so if I think back on our relationship, then I would say the majority of the time that I've known you, almost all of the things that we've ever engaged in has been pretty deep. They're nothing really surface level. It's always been fairly substantial. And, outside of, my wife taking pictures for your cabinet company back in the day.
Sure.
Probably the simplest our relationship has ever been.
Fair. But, well, yeah, no. And this is the thing, like it's not that our conversations haven't had meaning, but I feel like at this point, there's a certain investment that it takes to be like, okay, we're in each other's corner in a solid way. Versus like, here's my situation. What's your advice to that? Mm-hmm. And so I don't really need much context now for you. I know who you are. I know where you're at in life. I think you do with me to a large degree. And so like, there's a back and forth now that we have that we didn't have in the past, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I definitely don't think that I know you in the same way that Josh does, just in the history and the daily camaraderie and co-working aspect of things. It's taken me a long time to get to know you, and like just the whole. It's funny because even just a year ago you were talking about how one of the things that you appreciate most in life is mystery, and I don't think I really fully appreciated until that point how mysterious you are
Oh,
and like
nice.
how long it's actually taken me to get to know you because I've known you for more than a decade now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I am still finding out a lot of things about who you actually are that I had
Hmm.
no idea.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
That's great. Ah, that's good. So I want to dig into your brain today,
All
and
right.
I'm excited about this
That's a
because I
scary
think
place.
that there's some gold that you've got between your ears, and we want to dig some of it out. And so one of the places where you have, I think, a ton of strength is on the operational side of business. I
Yep.
think that you have a way of assessing companies and getting to the heart of what needs to change and finding systems and stuff to in order to make improvements. So I want to dig into this. I think it's a place where you can shed some light for people. This is not a small issue, and I'm going to frame this with a small story from my past that I was working with a company, running a division for a company, for a larger renovating company. I've mentioned them in the past. I haven't mentioned their name, and I won't. But I was running a company, a division, and it was just in a transition for my life. And I knew these guys, and they're like, "Hey, why don't you just run our roofing division?" And because we want to have that anyways, and so you kind of be like semi-autonomous, but we'll run your books and basically have your accounts and stuff through our company. There'll be like kind of a whatever, siphon off some cash there on the marketing side, and
Hmm.
just figure it out. It wasn't a very stringent, and they were really in development phase. They were really expanding fast, and so I was running, doing work, and one day I get a call from one of their top guys, and he's like, "We've got a black hole in our company, and we think it's you." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, we seem to be $70,000 like not below where we should be, and we're just like did a quick assessment, and we think that it's your division." And I'm like, "Oh, all right, like interesting." And so it was an interesting approach to the conversation because I didn't really know this particular guy very well. He was kind of
Yeah.
more in the background,
Yeah.
and um, and I had been running a profit loss, but very rudimentary, just so that I knew more or less where I was at with my jobs.
Right.
Just like profit loss, job by job, just making sure that I was basically on track. And I'd been doing this for long enough in my life that I knew a pretty good idea of where I was even without the P&L.
Yeah.
But I didn't sleep that night. And I'm like, I don't want to assume that he's wrong. So I didn't push back a ton. I'm
Hmm.
like, let me just dig into the numbers that I have accessible to myself, and let's talk tomorrow, basically. And so I stayed up through the night and I was pushing numbers. And turns out he was wrong. And they were just growing so fast they didn't know where they were bleeding. My division was not strong, but neither were their other divisions. And I wasn't losing money, but I also wasn't making them a ton.
Yeah.
And I was one of their newer divisions. So it was a fair guess for him.
It
What
was a
was
guess.
happening is that they were growing so fast that they just, and their numbers, their spreadsheets, their P&Ls were not keeping up to their growth.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want to kind of dig into. I think it was one of the first wake up calls in my life where just having the right numbers and knowing what numbers to look for and how to assess, I just realized how important that is. A lot of people in small business tend to avoid this side of things
Hmm.
because they're busy actually producing.
Yeah.
And so they feel like time in front of a computer, time on spreadsheets, time budgeting, assessing, making tweaks based on numbers. It's just like, don't talk to me about this. Like, I'm out there, I'm talking to customers, I'm doing important things. Like, don't
Yeah.
mess with me.
Yeah.
And I think it's misguided. And to kind of wrap that story up so that people don't leave it hanging in their heads, I didn't work for this company for too much longer. The company imploded because mostly they didn't have control of their metrics.
Oh
They
no.
didn't know which numbers mattered and how to assess it and tweak it in real time.
Right.
And thankfully, I didn't go down in flames as the cause for that, but it was a big enough issue at the moment for me to remember it and remember it well,
Yeah.
and recognize. And I think since then in my own company, my P&Ls and my assessment of where I'm at, where my fixed costs are at, all of those things, they really matter to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's not some vague thing. If you ask me at any given point in the season where I'm at, I can tell you. And it may not be like, I may not be proud of the numbers, or I may be, depending on the season, etc., but I will know where I'm at.
Yeah.
And so when you look at a small company, first of all, do you see this as being an issue with the small companies and the owners that you've talked to? And B, when you're looking at the numbers, like, walk us through what you're looking for.
Well, the first thing that this reminds me of is one of my best buddies up north there. I loved going hunting with him, and so I'd go visit him all the time out in the Burns Lake area. And he was a general contractor, a house builder out there. Just had his own company with a business partner, relatively small. And, after I'd been working with Primus for a number of years and been working on the scaling side of things, I was probably 60-40 between field work and office work. And he would always make fun of me that most of my job was stuff that he didn't actually consider work. The planning, the organizing, the reviewing and debriefing, the actually looking at the numbers and the metrics. That was like, he would do some of that, but mostly like evenings and weekends, and it would kind of like a half-assed sort of like, I'll do this because I probably should, and the accountant's gonna get on me for not being organized if I don't. So it's kind of comical just to think about that. And like, that was quite a few years ago, and I know he's grown past that perspective. But he always used to poke fun of me for it, that, my whole job is just about something that he doesn't even consider real work.
Right.
Yeah. So
it's like modern art. It's like, it's not really art, man. You're just kind of throwing paint on a page.
Basically. But like, I think that some of the things that really transformed my thinking of it was, I can't even remember the first person that recommended it to me, but the E-Myth. There was an E-Myth Contractor edition that was written by Michael Gerber, and it's a small book, which is great because I'm not the world's biggest reader, but I blew through it, and it was just mind blowing. Because I totally
brilliant book, E-Myth. Yeah, brilliant work.
So, but it describes more or less exactly what you're talking about, just as far as how most people start in business with a technical skill, and then they progress in growing that business because, okay, well, they're half decent at making sales. Great. They're really good at delivery. So then they get more customers, make more sales, but then, having to grow in project management. Okay, well, that's a new skill set. Having to grow in business administration. Okay, well, that's a new skill set. Having to grow in bookkeeping or marketing because, okay, well, now you had to hire guys, and so you have to keep them busy, and it's this big cycle. It just snowballs and turns into companies like the one that you just talked about, where they start bleeding out of holes that they don't even know exist.
Absolutely.
And so it is an interesting one to try to triage, because most of the time companies that are doing that, they're exactly like the one you just described, where they're acting on gut instinct as opposed to real metric. And so he challenged you because it was an obvious opportunity, and
it was a fair guess.
It's a fair guess, but it was a guess.
Totally.
And so like it's frustrating to see, because like I see I'm an opportunist, and so I see the opportunity that people have. But I think most entrepreneurs are opportunists, and in a lot of cases, myself included, we think that things are going better than they actually are.
Sure.
And so then we're not paying attention to the things that we need to.
Here's the fascinating thing. I believe, like all statistics, you can create your books in such a way that makes you feel better about what you're doing.
Oh, sure. And
you like what categories you pay attention to, how you align what your books are doing can be to flatter yourself. Like there's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that makes me think of the saying, what gets measured gets managed, and what gets managed
Yeah.
improves.
Yeah.
But I think maybe I'm relying too much on other people's wisdom too. But I actually got quite a kick out of a Bill Gates quote that I heard. And I'll butcher it a little bit because I'll have to paraphrase, but it was something to the effect of, the bad thing about success is that it makes smart people think that they know what they're doing.
Yes.
And
yeah.
And so you see that a lot of times where some people get like just a little bit of success, and maybe they've doctored their book so that it's telling them what they think they want to know. And in reality, I hear it a lot of times when people are looking at their gross margin, and it's like, oh yeah, my gross margin I'm killing it.
Yeah.
And like, oh, that's great. What about your net? Like, how are you doing at the end of the year? And they're like, oh yeah, well, it was a rough year. Like, no, those things are very much intertwined. Like, you can't have a good one without the other. If you don't know what your overhead is, then your gross profit be damned. Like it's kind of.
Well, and this is the interesting thing. I mean, I think that's one of the things that smaller entrepreneurs, like people that are running smaller companies, and particularly younger ones, in my opinion, when I ask them how their company's doing, often they'll be like, yeah, I did 1.5 million last year. And I'm like, okay, like that means very little to me other than maybe you have friends or you can market a bit. Like that's fine. But it may not even tell me that, because if you're cheaper than everyone else and you're providing good work, you can do $18 million worth of business. Like it's not hard to get business if you're cheap and you have no margins. Yeah. And at one point when I was working in the cabinet company, there was an issue that we were having around pricing of one particular item. And my accountant looked at me, he goes, you do business like that, everything you sell, you go further in the hole. He's like, the harder you market, the worse you're going to be.
Oh yeah. I think I remember you telling that story.
That's the truth, man. And that's an awkward place to be. And that was thankfully, and this is a discussion for another day. I think that you got to be careful what advice you take from accountants, because accountants' job is different than what our job is as business people. However, that kind of and in fairness, my accountant also is a small businessman and thinks like a businessman, so it's very helpful for me. Not all of them do. Some of them are thinking strictly about how do I save you taxes, which is a very different discussion than how do we build a company.
Yeah.
But I think that it's one of those things when he mentioned this, and I'm like, yeah, we got to really look at that hard.
Yeah.
Because you can push hard, you can feel like you're killing it. I know, and I've mentioned this maybe before, that I had a buddy a while back. He was running a company. He was not a businessman, but he was killing it. He was attractional. People liked him, and things were happening. He won Young Businessman of the Year in his town, and he was killing it. And 2 years later, he was out of business. And he would always tell me about his gross numbers, never about his net.
Yeah, I remember when I was very early on in business, and our accountant would say stuff like, revenue is vanity, but cash is king. And that didn't mean a lot back then because I was not a lot different than everybody else, and I loved the game. And that's what really struck me as far as entrepreneurialism went. And I had a number of other friends that were also running electrical businesses, and so there was always just kind of like that one-upmanship where we kind of competing, and
you're at 2 million, well, we're at 2.5.
Like, how many guys are you running? What are the jobs? And that competition is absolutely vanity, and
I mean, it's fun.
Oh yes.
Like there, and it reminds me of that saying. My brother was a really good golfer, and they would always say, you drive for show and you putt for dough. And it's like, if you can hit it large and huge, I mean, that's great fun. And my brother was like a big swinger, but he was also a really good putter, which is why he did really well.
Nice.
But it's putting for dough is really like what I think is having your administrative side of your company in line is like, it's where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah.
Because you just think about, I think, and this is something that Josh and I have discussed on this podcast, and it's kind of a reoccurring theme, but just equating effort with effectiveness, equating sweat with like moving forward is often just we can get deceived really fast. We're optimistic as business people. We believe that we're moving forward, even if we're moving sideways or backwards often. And I think that just having this sense that, while I'm sweating, so we're doing something is so wrong. And I find that the older I get, the more I will take like a couple weeks here and there to literally just press pause. If I'm doing my books, I typically like I'm a little different this way. I'm a very small businessman. Like I'm a onepreneur really in my company for the most part. I don't have any full-time employees. I have part-time here and there. I hire subs quite a bit, that type of thing. But so a very small company. And so when I'm in my off season, I will often like shut everything off so that I can think for a while. So I can look at my numbers and I can think for a while. And when I'm going to my next season at this point in my career, I'm very careful about the jobs that I'm taking with reflection of not just what worked for me 10 years ago, but where I'm at right now, what my output can be and how I can maximize that, and sweat as little as possible for the most possible gain while still giving my customer what I feel to be supreme value, because that really matters.
Yeah.
Like some people are like, well, just jack up your price. It's like, well, if there's not a value equation attached to that, then that's just like, that story's not going to end well.
No, there's only so much you can do. I mean, the market, especially for trades, is based on competitive bid. And so, I mean, you've carved out a unique niche where people are definitely willing to pay more for your services, but you're always coming back to that triangle basically of the three core aspects. There's price, time, and quality, and you pick two.
Yeah.
But I love what you're saying, just as far as taking time to think. And it's funny because right now my world is getting quite a lot busier again. I'm 9 months or so into my new role here with this new company, and things are it's starting to snowball.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying it, but I'm also recognizing that rather than just getting busier, I need to be smart about my reaction, as opposed to just continuously being reactive. I need to take time to be strategic and proactive.
Yes.
And I think a lot of that actually started changing for me when I started working with Joel Berg.
Okay.
So when he moved back from China, he was telling me about how he likes coaching and all this kind of stuff. And I've had lots of mentors and stuff in my life, but I hadn't really worked with a lot of coaches.
Yeah.
And definitely not on the business side. But some of the conversations that we had just set off a bit of a light bulb. And I started working with some different coaches that started to actually help draw these things out of me. Like, well, how are you planning for that kind of thing? What can you do differently about that situation in the future? And it's like, oh, I never actually thought about that. Like,
right.
I should actually plan to do things differently in the future, but that means that I need to change the way that I do things now. Instead of reacting in the future, I can be prepared for it. And so I usually have a business coach or some kind of coach that I'm working with these days, just to be able to think through things. I think similar to Joel, I'm also a verbal processor. And so, I remember my mom trying to tell me, when I was growing up, to think before you speak. Like, that doesn't happen.
It doesn't work for me.
Happen. I think as I'm speaking, it's kind of a funny thing because now even in my marriage, my wife has commented on how funny it is because I'll say things, and in my mind, I'm just mulling them over. And she,
sure,
early on in our marriage, she was thinking like, "Wow, this is like crazy stuff that he's talking about. Like, this is gonna has serious implications." And like, no, I'm just rolling things around.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I kind of going back a little bit more to your point. I remember some of the more impactful things that we did at Primus, like when we actually started to really make, big strides in the right direction. Like things were fairly easy to manage when we had less than 10 guys.
Sure.
Because we could have our finger like right on the pulse.
And correct me if I'm wrong, at that point, you don't have a massive administrative staff either.
No, there was like myself, my business partner, and we had a bookkeeper, administrator, kind of
slash receptionist,
and all the things. And everything just kind of worked. We didn't have super clear domains. Everybody, there's lots of overlap all over the place. But we were pretty successful. And then when we tried to grow beyond that, we ran into all kinds of issues, and our profitability tanked. Our revenue really grew substantially, but our take-home pay was next to nothing for years. And it wasn't until we clarified roles and we had structure, we had training processes so that we could actually have effective staff and consistent deliverables, and we hired more senior people. We found that there was a ton of value in paying for expertise and having those guys to
But
rely.
see, how did you make that conclusion? Because if you're working in a fog, you can't make that assessment. So something like that, like it requires you to have some numbers in front of you to look at and say, what if we shift it this way, and how's that going to affect it? Like there is a trial and error process in there, is there not?
There is definitely a trial and error process. But I mean, I love spreadsheets. I think basically in spreadsheets.
Your brain is a grid.
My brain is a grid. When I need to process something, then I'll usually do it with a spreadsheet. And so it may some of it is still speculative, but I was thinking about value. When I'm bidding on a project, then I allow so many hours for a task. Now, if I give that task to an apprentice, it's going to take twice as long.
Right.
If I give it to a senior guy, then it'll probably actually happen twice as fast.
Right.
Now, the difference in pay between an apprentice that's going to take twice as long and a senior tech that's going to do it twice as fast, as what I've allowed for, so like 4 times better than that apprentice, is maybe, somewhere between 50 and 100% of that wage. So your actual output is double.
Yes.
And so the interesting multiplier on that was also that if you have senior people on the team, not only can they actually bring 4 times the value of a young apprentice, they are actually also able to train your apprentices to do likewise. And so your entire team output becomes more by a substantial amount. If you have good on the ground leadership, then your output starts to multiply exponentially.
So what are you tracking when you're looking at your manpower and your P&Ls, your profit and loss? What are you tracking there? Because this is a needle, right? Like you can move this one way or another with the number of apprentices, the number of journeymen you have, who you're trying to hire, who you end up letting go, all of those things are affected by what you're looking at on your spreadsheet.
Well, I mean, there's a lot more to it than just a spreadsheet when it comes to like the really granular stuff. If I'm looking at it on a project basis, then there are a ton of implications.
Yeah.
Everything from how the weather is affecting the morale to job site cleanliness and people's ability to actually move. I'm famous for making an absolute mess when I work.
Right.
But I will always stop to clean up before I move on to the next task. And it's actually very, very important to me to have an organized space. I will absolutely destroy that organization in the process of execution. But I'll always bring it back to that point of order because I think that that's really important. And I found that my production is substantially better when I have that. And there's a little bit of an ebb and flow to it. But what am I actually paying attention to? Like I'm trying to pay attention to a lot of those kinds of things because if you stop to clean up, you stop to actually take time to think, to your point earlier.
Yes.
And plan your next steps. You're actually going to do it far more effectively than if you just keep your head down and push through. And so on a bigger project, I'm definitely looking at how long is it taking the team to do these different tasks compared to what I've allowed for.
Yeah.
But how are they doing as far as their attitude is concerned? Because attitude actually matters a lot in execution. And so when I'm catching up with them day to day, I'm listening to things in their voice, listening for cues just to hear how they're actually doing on a job. Because if their morale starts to dip, then productivity is not far behind.
Yes.
And it's a lot more than just numbers on a spreadsheet. And a lot of what I've found is that it depends a lot on how you're communicating expectations as well. And so even more than just trying to monitor what's going on, I'm paying a lot of attention as to what is being expressed and communicated and planned.
So what you're saying is like you're balancing art and science. Like you're not trying to make the numbers be the exclusive boss. You're also looking at the soft markers that eventually will affect those numbers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess that's part of the trying to get out of being just simply reactive. I'm trying to pay attention to the things that are going to have implications further down the road. Yeah. And those are definitely the areas that I've had to grow in a ton. I am not the most gifted person when it comes to, innate emotional intelligence. But growing in that over the last decade has been transformative to both myself personally, but then also in my marriage, my business, and all kinds of other things. Because understanding how other people operate and what's important to them makes a huge difference on my experience of everything else.
When you look at job profit and loss versus overall effectiveness of a season or a year, whatever, as a tradesperson, we often think of seasons. And I think that's because our seasons shift what we do to some degree, maybe not so much where you live now, but certainly for Josh and myself being in the more exterior, and Joel actually, a lot of so we think in seasons in a sense.
Yeah.
And so I know that when I was younger, when I was starting out in business, I was much more willing to sacrifice individual jobs for what I felt was the bigger picture. And as I matured in business, I recognized that I really should be winning in the short term and the long term. Yeah. And I found that if I sacrifice too much in the short term, if I mispriced a job almost intentionally because I really wanted to get in with a certain group of people. I could justify that really easily, but I found it rarely worked. Like if I went on a negative on a single job, what I found was that would have a way bigger impact on my season than what I would think in the short term. I would think, well, it's not a big deal. Like I can take this loss and we can move on.
Yeah.
And it's worth it because of A, B, and C. But as I got older, I recognized that there's no excuse for losses. Like we're not doing business to go backward. We're doing business to go forward. And so for me, looking at my metrics and looking at my P&L and being brutally honest, here's the thing, is that what I find is that many small companies that are starting out, they know what materials they use on a specific job. They know their hours of input on the job itself. They do not reflect the hours behind the scenes, like your buddy saying, well, that's not real work. But those are real hours. And you can't tell your wife they're not real work because you're totally focused and she can talk to you during the time that you're doing your books and you're not even going to hear her, right? Like it's just how it is.
Yeah.
And you also, your fixed costs, as far as once you start to build an administrative staff and once you have an infrastructure, once you have leases to pay and trucks to pay, etc. If you're not integrating the real numbers of what your business costs, the fixed costs that are attributed to every dollar that you bring in, then you can lie to yourself indefinitely.
Yeah.
And you can be surprised at the end of every year when your accountant says, well, actually, and you'll be like, wait, no, every job I made money. How is it possible that I end up with a net loss? And so I just think that we can lie to ourselves with what we're tracking. You don't do that. And I think for you, so I'm trying to pull this out of you. Like, I think intuitively you're well beyond that. But how do you convince a small businessman to say, look, like you've got to find a way to be honest with yourself. You've got to have a spreadsheet that actually has teeth, that when you look at it, like these are the numbers that matter.
Yeah. I've seen some good examples, just, floating through Facebook and Instagram or whatever, of different business coaches that have ways of calculating that, in really simple ways. But I can't remember when that really clicked for me, because it sort of just made sense. That, if I'm going to price this job, I've allowed, 250 hours for the job, and, it's going to cost me, 20 grand in material or whatever. So my fixed cost is, say, $50,000. Great. Now, in addition to that, I need to factor in how much management time is going to go into that. Do I have a receptionist or admin team that I need to pay for on top of that? I've always had a bookkeeper that I need to pay, because there's no way I'm ever doing books.
Yeah.
I'll write spreadsheets all day long, but I'm not doing the books.
Yeah.
And you've got accounting bills to pay. You've got wages to pay and taxes on top of that. You've got trucks that you need to fuel up and insure and maintain and probably have lease payments on. You've got rent for a building space, because there's always a warehouse or something that I've been working out of, and all kinds of these things that are just adding up in the background. Like, or even the computer that you work on, those are a couple $1,000 these days. Your phone that you're making, every business person that I know, for so long, it just felt like they were celebrating busyness by being stuck on their phone all the time. And, so you're paying $100 a month or whatever for a phone subscription, and like just all of these costs. And then you start to look at it, and now it's like my fixed cost is $50,000, and my overhead cost, if I actually stop to think about it, is like another 10 grand.
Yes. Yeah.
So for me to actually do this job costs 60 grand.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's Yeah, it's fascinating. It was funny. So I did a cooking class, for example, the other night with my wife. It was my birthday present. Loved it.
Nice.
So yeah, you poke fun at the fact that we have less for seasons down here. We got a lot more too. There's some great cooking classes.
That's
That I
awesome.
never had it up north.
Nice.
But the chef that was teaching the class was, giving us an example of, well, how much do you think the flour costs to make this pasta? It's like probably only about 45 cents.
Yeah.
And it's like, but then he kind of backpedaled a little bit. It's like, well, if you don't factor in, the time and going to the store and picking up the materials and all this kind of stuff, then it's actually really cheap. I'm like, yeah, but if you do factor in the cost of your time, then the cost of this pasta is actually astronomical.
Absolutely.
And so
Yeah.
it's like, it's funny how some people think in those terms.
Yeah.
And you can, I think to your point earlier, like you can miss the mark entirely thinking
Yeah.
that, oh, I saved a ton of money on buying these cheap materials or sourcing whatever.
Yeah.
But how much effort did that take you to find it?
Totally.
And
So my brother and I, when we started working together when we were kids, we come from a Mennonite background and where you don't waste anything, right? Like everything's got to be put to use. Like you just don't waste. And I still really believe in this. Like I believe that our culture in general just wastes way too much.
Yeah.
But we had with our shingles, there was a 6-inch piece that we would cut off of every second row. And we would save those pieces and use them over at the other side if needed. They weren't always needed, but if they were, we would align it so that we were using those pieces. It was just something we always did. One day I sat down and figured out what our potential savings were by doing that. And it was like, I don't know, like $4 in a job basically for the hassle of like treating this like it was something valuable versus just waste.
Yeah.
And then when you consider like, and I'm not saying that it was wrong because it also fit into our overall mentality of being careful and being precise and all of those things. Right. So on its own though, it didn't stand up because I was like, because we'd done this for years.
Yeah.
And then one day my brother's like, what are we actually saving with this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, actually nothing.
It's
kind of funny.
Those kinds of things will really get you.
Yeah, but I think that knowing what the things that matter really matter. I know that when I was young and it kind of introduced to business by a guy who ran a restaurant over in Southern Europe that was a good buddy of mine. And he would talk to me and he's like, if I'm buying a specialty fish for a guest that's coming for a business lunch that wants something special, he goes, I'll pay whatever the fisherman wants. Like, it's like, this is something that my customer is going to pay for. It's not a standard price. And if I've got to pay $200 for this fresh fish that comes out of the sea, and now my customer is going to pay me $600 because it's a special lunch that I'm putting on for him, he said, I have no issue with that. Yeah. He said, but I will fight for every penny on a loaf of bread, every penny.
Yeah.
Because he said, I need so many loaves all the time. It's a fixed cost, and I'm going to get that at the cheapest that I possibly can. And I was like, I didn't really get it because I was 16 and I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. But I've thought about it since. And I'm like, what he's saying is you got to pick your battles, but you got to know the numbers that matter.
Yeah.
And if you're not honest about them, and if you don't know which, if you're casual about those things, I mean, some people are in businesses where they can be casual and still make massive profit, but that's pretty rare. Usually you have to be pretty dedicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that it's funny because I think in the labor world, mechanics and mechanic shops got this figured out way sooner than most of us that were working out on houses. Because a mechanic shop, they were paying their tech $40 an hour and they were charging them out at 120.
Yeah.
And whereas on the job, I would have a guy that I was paying him out $25 an hour and I was charging him out at 30 essentially. Thinking, that was just how it ran when I was young. It's like, I'm going to pay my guy as much as I can. And literally at the end of the day, I'm like, if you've got a $5 cushion on your guy that you hired, you're literally losing money on the guy because there's just so many expenses attached to that guy that you've got to run an extra truck. You've got to, like, once you start doing the math, it's like, and so I remember thinking, oh, these guys that run these mechanic shops are like totally gouging people. And over time, I've come to realize, like, some of the metrics you got to look for is, like, if you can't charge out for at least in a trade, at least double what you're paying your guy, it's not worth having him there.
No, well, I mean, I think maybe one of the reasons that a mechanic shop would have figured it out before some of us that are in the construction industry is because their fixed overhead is a fair bit higher.
Yes, they are.
They're paying, like, right out of the gate, they've got to pay for a shop with a hoist and all kinds of expensive equipment.
Totally.
And I mean, like, my dad was a mechanic when I was growing up, and I remember going through the shop and he's showing me different diagnostic equipment and stuff that they have, and like, there's a lot.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
No, it's not. And so, like, just to get things started up, costs probably 20 grand, 25 grand
right.
tools. But then you're paying for rent on a warehouse or sorry,
not
a warehouse, but a shop space.
Yeah.
And so, like, your hourly cost on that is your guy plus your tech plus your shop space. And so even a small shop is actually going to cost you, $25,000 a month just to have.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And so it's like, wow, I guess.
Yeah. And so they would reflect it, and fairly.
Yeah.
But I just remember that when we were young, we're like, man, I wish we could do that with what we're doing. But then increasingly you realize that if you want to be sustainable, and I think this is something that I always encourage young business people is like, you can say, well, I can run lean, I can run with really tight profits and take losses here and there. But the problem is, like, if you're not making decent profits with a company, you can't be stable for your employees. You can't be stable for your family. You can't be stable for your community. Like, running good profit margins matter. And having a company that's actually got some stability, and caring about those numbers, man, I think that it's important. Yeah. And I think that the sooner that people get a handle on that, the more fun it is.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I still wrestle with is that, like, there is a really fine line between being really, like, legitimately cost conscious for the sake of your customers and offering the highest quality service that you can afford to for that value. And I think most of us have a tendency to overestimate our own value. Well, maybe that's not true. Maybe we fight the other way as well, that we underestimate ourselves as well. I
think it's dependent on the situation. Your chef was undervaluing his time just to make a point.
Well, he was
right?
definitely undervaluing my time.
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that if you are not actually considering, like, what you're worth and the value that you're bringing, big picture, then that can have some serious implications. One of the groups that we're a part of now, it added a layer onto it that I never really considered before. Even it's like, if you don't have good profit margins, then you really can't actually be expected to stand behind your product.
It's true,
because you're not going to be around in a couple of years when that warranty is actually necessary.
Totally.
And so, like, if I can think of a handful of times where we had callbacks when I worked at Primus, and usually it was like years later something would fail, and it's just like, okay, well, this is definitely beyond the 1 year standard warranty, but we're still around. We're going to stand behind our product regardless.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, we'll come up and we'll deal with that. It doesn't cost us that much as far as direct cost goes, and it makes a huge impact on the customer. And so it's like, overall, it's a good thing. But we could afford to do that because we were profitable.
Totally.
And so having that profitability matters actually quite a lot. And so, like, I feel like even 15 years now after I've been in business, different businesses.
Yeah.
Like I'm still developing my perspective on good money management, and a good godly perspective of what does it mean to be wealthy, or
Right.
like
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I am wealthy, but at the same time I wouldn't say that I'm not.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing to try and manage as a business owner, and especially a young entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I definitely know some young entrepreneurs that are immediately successful and, you know, then make funny decisions because of it.
Right.
Yeah, one of them being that they start scaling and they don't actually
Yeah.
have a clue what they're looking at or looking for.
Yeah.
One of the things that I keep thinking that I actually really want to mention in all of this is it took me, you know, more than 10 years into business before I had actually even heard of fractional business services.
Right.
And a fractional CFO is probably the most valuable thing that you could engage with as soon as possible,
Right. Yeah.
because they will help you to develop that perspective that you need of the metrics that
Yeah.
will actually impact your business, and
Yeah.
so many ways more than your accountant. A CFO and an accountant
For sure.
are
Yeah.
totally different.
Yes.
I really appreciated the accountants that I knew early on in business, and they would
Yeah.
try and coach us in how to think about things and all that sort of stuff. But accountants are typically looking at what was,
Absolutely.
and a CFO is looking at that data and telling you
Yeah.
what can be.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and that is like, that's where an entrepreneur lives, is what could.
Yes. Totally.
And so being able to have that interpretation was
Yeah.
absolutely transformative. And most of this fractional CFOs that I've met, I've only met a handful of them, but they tend to be entrepreneurial themselves.
Right.
They also tend, or the ones that I've met are younger guys, and so they're also pretty tech savvy. So they have some perspective on like different tech stacks and stuff that you can build to help you pay attention to different metrics in your business,
Yep.
and really help you dial in the data collection, because you know, early on in business a lot of that stuff seems very secondary, but especially as you start to scale your business, it is
Yeah.
super primary. It
Totally.
needs to be. I mean,
Yes.
I was talking earlier about some of the things that I'm paying attention to that are a little bit softer, just as
Yep.
far as like trying to pay attention to the team's morale and everything.
Yep.
Like, but you know, if you've got good data, something as simple as good daily logs from your field teams,
Yeah.
like that, those kind of things are some of the most important things
Yes.
that a business, a project manager or business owner can actually receive. You need to
Right.
know what's going on.
Yeah. And you can keep a temperature of where the health of your company
Yeah.
in ways in real time. And I think that this is something that we're going to talk about more between us here on this podcast, about how to stay healthy as a company. There's a lot of times that I think when you're starting out in the first number of years, and like you say, like some things take 10, 15 years to actually, for the penny to drop, like this actually matters. And I think that there's so often when a businessman can be paying attention to certain metrics because they need to in order to just get off the ground, to just get the ball rolling. There's
Yeah.
certain things that matter that you have to do just to start to move.
Yeah.
But then you've got to let go of caring about certain metrics and start paying attention to others as that ball starts moving down the road. And understanding when to shift perspective, when to shift what you're caring about. I think those types of things are things that we can dig into a little deeper in the future and kind of work through how those seasons change. And also just the fact that we don't expect success to be a straight line. And so there's times when you're growing, there's times when you need to consolidate, and how to recognize those kinds of seasons as well, I think is really important.
Yeah.
I always loved the analogy of a big truck going up a serious hill. If you're trying to gain a lot of altitude, so much easier for a truck if there's small plateaus in the middle of the big grind, so that they can gain a bit more speed and hit the next piece with a little bit of momentum, versus just grinding up one massive straight hill.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's just a lot of things that as you get older in business, they feel like they're intuitive and natural and like this is obviously how it works. But I think when you're starting out, I think if we're all honest with ourselves, a lot of this is just like really hard knock type of lessons.
Yeah.
So I think that what we're talking about, like these things are interesting. They matter. And I think that one of the things that you're pointing out is finding the right people, however that looks, whether you can hire them or like fractional services, which is something I think that a lot of small businessmen don't consider, but really a tool that's there. Especially these days, because you can do so much remote as well. Like it used to be, if you were in a small town somewhere, like a fractional CFO, good luck. You're not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But you can do that now remotely if you need to.
Yeah.
And so I think that, some of these kinds of services, having good legal advice, having good accounting advice, but recognizing where that advice starts and stops.
Yeah.
And knowing how much they can speak into your business and how much not. I mean, that was a massive lesson for me. I could go into a pretty intense story. One day I will, around how much credence I gave to accountants' advice at the beginning of my career, and how, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I think that, it's fun to turn something that feels painful into something that feels wonderful. And I think that for a lot of contractors, man, don't talk to me about my books. Don't talk to me about that side of things. Like, let's talk about gross numbers and let's go have a drink, and it's like, but once you start to see how valuable understanding, what numbers mean and really the story that they're telling, because this is the thing, right? Like what we're dealing with is real people, real lives, including our own, and it's a story. And the story has different ways of expressing itself. And I think when it comes to the spreadsheets and the metrics and what we're looking at, having a real good grasp of what matters, particularly in the season you're in, can take you from a place of like hoping that you're doing okay to having a sense of actual like, And one of the signs for me of a young businessman that really wants to improve is if they're willing to open their books to someone who knows in order to get advice.
Yeah.
I will see guys who be like, I don't know what's going on with my company. I need help, this and that. I'm like, well, you know what? Like, let's just take a look at basic numbers and we can walk it through. Oh no, I can't do that. I'm like, because they're damning. And you don't want to change. Yeah. And I think that like having a hard look at numbers with people that care and know, hiring the right people to help you do that, it's like a humbling thing. Yeah. Because you're usually you gotta make changes. Yeah. But man, can it actually be so beneficial.
Yeah. If you're willing to be corrected, then you can grow a lot. One of the things that you were talking about earlier, just as far as losing money on a particular job, I'm just thinking about that again now. Like one of the things that I've come to value in those experiences is like, okay, well, that's me paying for, tuition at the School of Hard Knocks.
Yes.
And so I think learning, especially as an entrepreneur, can be very expensive.
But yes, it can.
But at the same time, like if you're not willing to learn, that's far more expensive.
Yeah. Taking a loss and not learning, come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's a loss.
But I think like you talk about guys that are not willing to open their books. If you don't have the humility to actually be corrected, then that's basically what you're doing. You're losing money and you're not actually getting the benefit of growing from it.
That's right.
And so it's like you're paying tuition.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Well, and here's a thought to end on, which I think is interesting, is often I find that the people with the higher IQs are the least willing to open their books. And I just think that sometimes intelligence gets in the way of progress. And I think that sometimes when we think that we're intelligent enough to figure it out, and the truth is none of us are. Like we all have blind spots. We all have weaknesses. And sometimes just the fact that we think we're intelligent is a pretty big blind spot because, you know, like we're all pretty stupid in other ways. And if we don't recognize that, like just being able to accept that. And I think that's a reason why a lot of like C students are better entrepreneurs than A students often.
Yeah.
Because they're willing to like get messy and recognize, oh yeah, we made a mistake. We can live through this. Whereas an A student makes a mistake and they're like, the world is ending. I just made a mistake. It's like, really?
Yeah. A C student is a little bit more aware of their shortcomings because people.
Yeah. And willing to work through a difficulty.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's fun. We touched on a lot of stuff and we're going to do this again. It's just a lot of fun. And I think Kaylin, our one of our editing guys, got this figured out so that we can probably do this simpler and simpler as we go along. I might be able to even do it from the beach one day, so that'll be great. From a mountaintop.
Well, I'm in Mexico next week. Maybe we can actually try then.
There you go. That sounds fun. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Chris. This has been good fun. And I think it's kind of like a ... type of discussion where we'll come back around and dig a bit deeper before long, but I appreciate the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All righty. Okay. Thanks guys for listening. Take care.